3 years into my marriage to Shenling, we remained childless. Then the Emperor's most favored princess arrived at our doorstep, heavily pregnant. I now carry Shenling's child within me. I implore you to step down and yield the throne. I in my past life, I refused to divorce him. Later, the princess suffered a difficult delivery, taking both her own life and the child's. Shenling blamed me for this tragedy. Consumed by hatred, he forced me to ingest slow-acting poison daily, torturing me until my death. Given another chance, I smiled gently at the princess. 7 months pregnant. 30,000 taels, I said, I'll officiate your wedding. After all, only I knew the truth. Shenling was infertile from birth. I was reborn on the very day Princess Changle came calling. After my in-laws passed away, Shenling, who had once treated me with polite reserve, suddenly began leaving early and returning late. His attitude toward me shifted drastically, constantly threatening to divorce me. I was wholly occupied managing the Shen family trading house left by my in-laws, leaving me no time for him, yet I never imagined he would consort with Princess Changle. Princess Changle arrived, seated herself directly in the seat of honor, and stared down at me from above. I am carrying Shenling's child. I expect you to step aside and yield your place. Princess Changle's imposing presence dominated the room as she glanced at Shenling beside her. Shenling's gaze, however, darted away, unable to meet mine. I smiled. Shenling, don't you have anything to say? Shenling cleared his throat. Chen-Yingwan, you've borne no children in 3 years. It's time to step aside. Even if there's no love between us, how can you bear to let the Shen family die out? Considering how well my parents treated you, I must admit, my in-laws were truly kind to me. Shenling and I were betrothed since birth. Later, when my family fell on hard times and my parents fell gravely ill, my in-laws paid for their grand funeral and welcomed me into the family. Had it not been for them, I wouldn't have guarded that secret to my death in my previous life. But alas, it was all for naught. Such a person was utterly unworthy. After my death, he squandered every last bit of the family fortune my in-laws and I had painstakingly built. That good-for-nothing truly was of no use whatsoever. I looked at Shenling. Since you've long been dissatisfied with me, why didn't you simply divorce me? Wouldn't that have been far more decisive? It would have spared the princess the trouble of making this journey while heavily pregnant, only to confront me personally. You truly have no regard for a woman's dignity. Hearing this, Princess Changle couldn't help but glance at Shenling several times. Shenling visibly flinched, his gaze growing increasingly evasive. I scoffed, because you cannot, and dare not, divorce me. Turning to the princess, I stated each word deliberately. While my in-laws were alive, Shenling signed a written pledge before them and swore a solemn oath that he would never divorce me in this lifetime. First, because my in-laws knew Shenling was a good-for-nothing, and only I could safeguard the Shen family's vast estate. Second, they trusted only I would guard the Shen family's secrets and preserve its reputation. Shenling knew only one part of the story. He stubbornly retorted, so what if you're good at business, am I not? Princess Changle frowned. Did you truly swear such an oath? Shenling hastily explained with a smile. It was just to please my parents. A casual remark. Changle, don't believe Chen-Yingwan's lies. She's sowing discord. Princess Changle pondered for a moment before shaking her head. Very well, Chen-Yingwan, I know this situation is unfair to you. I understand your grievances. Whatever you say, I won't hold it against you. However, if you agree to a divorce settlement, I will compensate you with 10,000 taels of gold. Shenling froze, seemingly stunned that the princess would be so generous just to be with him. A flicker of secret delight crossed his eyes. He must have been thinking, if the princess is willing to spend 10,000 taels of gold to be with me now, she'll surely spend even more for me in the future. In my previous life. Upon hearing this, I refused the princess without a second thought. This time, however, I held up 3 fingers without hesitation. Then I want 30,000 taels. Not only will I step aside, but I'll also officiate your wedding. Chen-Yingwan, you're asking for the moon, Shenling shouted. He already regarded Princess Changle's fortune as his own. My raising the price naturally pained him, as if I were taking money directly from his pocket. Princess Changle also froze for a moment. Coming to her senses, she unexpectedly revealed a hint of admiration in her gaze. Fine. I'll give you 40,000 taels. You may handle the wedding arrangements. Shenling froze, hastily protesting. Changle, this is impossible. How could Chen-Yingwan be worth 40,000 taels of gold? Princess Changle grew visibly impatient. If she isn't worth it, then isn't my child worth it? Shenling's defiance instantly crumbled. But she can't possibly preside over the wedding. Why not? I cut Shenling off. I've personally presided over weddings. Who could have more experience than me? Shenling found himself unable to argue. Princess Changle nodded. I think you have a point. When can everything be ready? I replied. If your highness is in a hurry, it can be done in 3 days. It happens to be an auspicious date. The princess agreed. Then let it be in 3 days. Seeing this, Shenling hurriedly protested, but Princess Changle, my relatives cannot reach the capital within 3 days. It doesn't matter. Who said your relatives must attend? Shenling froze, but this is our joint wedding. Princess Changle's impatience was written across her face. You've already been married once. Now you want to invite relatives again? Don't you feel ashamed? Princess Changle turned to leave, glancing at me as she passed. I trust you. Don't disappoint me. Only after she departed did Shenling dare glare at me. What trick are you playing? I countered. What trick? You could have said a month from now. Why insist on 3 days? How was I supposed to know that's an auspicious day? Oh, you mean that? I smiled lightly. It's my mother's death anniversary. Isn't that an auspicious day? The very next day, I began procuring everything needed for the wedding. After all, it was 40,000 taels of gold. I meant what I said, and I was determined to make it a grand affair. Walking through the streets with my servants carrying purchases, passers-by gave us all sorts of looks. It seemed they all knew I was about to host my husband's wedding. Truly, good news never travels far, but bad news spreads like wildfire. Still, I wouldn't believe it if someone wasn't deliberately spreading rumors. That very afternoon, I was abducted by a group of people. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself standing in the opulent princess's residence. Princess Changle reclined on her couch, gazing at me. I smiled faintly. Princess, if you wish to see me, why resort to such methods? As my employer, a single word from you would have sufficed. Princess Changle, this way is more convenient. I came only to inform you, the wedding need not be grand. Simplicity is sufficient. I was puzzled. Princess, this is your first marriage. Why not celebrate it in style? The princess shook her head. I have no desire to marry. I merely wish to give the child in my womb a name. I couldn't help asking, so you chose Shenling? The princess fell silent for a moment, then actually laughed. I knew my judgment wasn't the best. I bowed my hands. Same here. I'm no better. Our eyes met for an instant, and we smiled at each other. In that very moment, I saw her thoughts. Though I couldn't fathom the reason behind her intent, I was certain of one thing: the princess did not love Shenling. Or rather, she knew Shenling was barren. Shenling was merely a tool to legitimize her child. Without me, Shenling would indeed have been an excellent choice, utterly foolish, easy to manipulate. Alas, in my previous life, I was too fixated on guarding secrets. But no matter how stubborn I was, that life is over. This time, I will repay every ounce of pain Shenling inflicted upon me. I looked at the princess. I promise you, princess, to keep everything simple. I only ask that you grant me one request in return. Princess, more money? Fine. No. I shook my head. After the princess and Shenling are married, I demand the entire Shen family estate and the Shen residence. The princess chuckled. I thought you'd ask me to kill Shenling. I shrugged indifferently. Whether Shenling lives or dies matters little to me. Someday, Shenling will lose his usefulness. When he becomes a discarded pawn, killing him would be as easy as moving a finger. The princess pressed further, but the Shen residence isn't exactly a place worth clinging to. What's there to linger over? Shenling certainly isn't worth it. But his parents treated me well. I promised them I'd safeguard the Shen family's holdings. Since Shenling can't be relied upon, it falls to me to take over. The princess smiled. I hadn't realized you possessed such magnanimity. I'll agree to it. As I rose to leave, The princess called me back. After a moment's hesitation, she finally spoke. After the wedding, you must leave the capital immediately. The farther you go, the better. Don't let anyone find you. I frowned. When might I return? The princess replied, if all goes smoothly. Likely within half a year. Once matters here are settled, I'll summon you back. Finished? Finished what? The princess showed no intention of explaining. So I pressed no further. I'll follow the princess's arrangements. I agreed without betraying any emotion. This wasn't a difficult thing for me. I'd never imagined the princess would harm me. Even if everyone in the capital claimed she was arrogant and tyrannical, abusing the emperor's favor to act recklessly. Only I knew she was not that kind of person. In my previous life, though I had rejected her, she never used her power to force my compliance. Nor had she ever done anything truly wicked to me. Given her status, killing me would have been as easy as breathing. Therefore, when she spoke these words to me, I believed she did not speak them with ill intent. So, before departing, I couldn't resist offering a reminder. Princess, is your pregnancy stable? The princess paused slightly. Why do you ask? She inquired. My pregnancy has been monitored by the imperial physicians all along. Naturally, it is stable. I couldn't help but continue. Though the pregnancy is stable, it wouldn't hurt to have more physicians examine it. After speaking, I bowed my head. I have overstepped my bounds. The princess's gaze upon me was complex, as if probing the thoughts within my heart. 2 days later, I formally presided over their wedding ceremony. This farce, a commoner wife yielding her position to a princess, spread like wildfire throughout the capital. On the day the princess entered the mansion, crowds of citizens packed the streets, blocking every passage. Among the guests were servants from the princess's entourage and powerful imperial relatives. Yet none dared utter a word. Just as I stood in the main hall, about to utter the words first bow to heaven and earth, a dozen black-clad figures wielding long blades suddenly leapt down from the rafters. Chaos erupted instantly. The princess's guards scrambled to protect her and prepare for an escape. Xinling darted about, dodging left and right, terrified of being struck. I took 2 steps back, only to bump into the table behind me. Turning around, I saw a long sword slashing toward my face. I raised my hand to block it, but a dagger appeared before me. It was the princess, rushing over and using her dagger to deflect the blow for me. Clutching her stomach in agony, she turned to her guards, "Take Chen Wan with us." By the time I regained my senses, her guards had already hoisted me onto their shoulders. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself standing outside a bamboo grove. Following the path through the bamboo, I came upon a wooden hut. Before the hut stood a man in blue robes, radiating an ethereal aura, like a fallen immortal. Spotting me, he offered a faint smile. "You must be Lady Chen?" "I am Huaiji, the princess's personal attendant." Though he was her attendant, his demeanor suggested a relationship beyond mere service. "I hear it was you who advised the princess to protect her pregnancy?" Huaiji inquired. I frowned. "How did you know? Does the princess share everything with him?" Huaiji smiled, but his reply sidestepped the question. "The princess's pregnancy is safeguarded by me. I come from a family of physicians. I would never harm the princess. Moreover, the child within her is no ordinary being. Therefore, I hope Madame Chen will refrain from discussing this further with the princess, lest it cause her undue worry." No sooner had he finished than a guard emerged from the house, announcing the princess wished to see me. Before entering, I glanced back at Huaiji. Was it my imagination? I couldn't shake the feeling his gaze carried a warning. A finely crafted bow hung on the chamber wall. Only a curtain separated the princess and me. "Thank you for your rescue today, Your Highness." I bowed my hands in respect. No need for formalities. It was because of me you suffered this undeserved calamity. Her voice sounded incredibly weak. Qin Yingwan, you should leave today. The farther you go, the better. When this matter is resolved, I'll have the guards bring you back. I nodded. But just before stepping out, she called me back. Qin Yingwan, based on what you've seen. If certain things could be done over, would there be a chance for a different outcome? My pupils dilated sharply. I turned to look at the faintly visible figure behind the curtain. I think perhaps there would. A storm was brewing. Guards escorted me out of the city. Passers-by hurried along the streets. And the alley leading to the Shin residence lay eerily quiet. Not even a cup of tea's time had passed before I glanced back at the city walls, only to see it heavily besieged by troops. This had never happened in my previous life. My heart pounded with unease as I walked farther and farther away, my backpack strapped to my back. After nightfall, I found lodging in a small town. At dawn, I hired an ox cart to continue my journey. Finally, after 3 days, I found a place to stay. It was because this village had a renowned physician. In my previous life, the princess's pregnancy was unstable, and the imperial physicians were helpless. The emperor flew into a rage, ordering 100,000 corpses to be laid out. Someone went to seek out a reclusive divine physician, but by the time the divine physician was found, the princess had already passed away. So I wandered around with my bundle asking about her until I finally found this place. This was also where the divine physician had last disappeared. I settled nearby for a while, eating and wandering about each day. Days passed in a flash. Finally, by a stroke of luck, I found the divine physician. After hearing my account, he stroked his beard and repeated, difficult. Childbirth for a woman was a perilous ordeal, and even he couldn't guarantee success. I offered a fortune and pleaded earnestly. In the end, the divine physician gave me a pill. With good fortune, this medicine might save a life. I took the pill and returned to the inn, only to hear a commotion downstairs that very night. I opened the window to look out. To my surprise, Shen Ling stood below with a retinue of servants, frowning at the inn's simplicity. He looked up and met my gaze. How could Shen Ling be here? The princess's voice echoed in my mind. Don't let anyone find you. Shen Ling was clearly here for me. But why? A knock sounded at the door almost immediately. I lived on the second floor and couldn't climb walls. Opening the door, I saw Shen Ling's insincere smile. My lady, you've been quite the challenge to find. I remained expressionless. Why are you here? Aren't we already divorced? Shen Ling chuckled. A day as husband and wife creates 100 days of affection. Have you forgotten me so quickly, madam? He advanced step by step with a sly grin, then slammed the door shut behind him. I glared at him. Aren't you afraid of the princess? Shen Ling scoffed. That bitch never gave me the time of day. Now, I'm not afraid of her either. He scrutinized me from head to toe. Ever since our parents passed, you've held all the power at home. I even had to ask you for money to see a play. Now, it's your turn to beg me on your knees. I remained silent. Shen Ling reached out to touch my face. Suddenly, I drew the dagger the princess had given me at our parting from my waist and plunged it deep into his shoulder. Shen Ling's eyes widened. Just before his scream escaped, I stuffed a rag into his mouth. If you don't want my next blade to slit your throat, shut your mouth. Shen Ling stared at the blood-stained dagger pressed against his neck. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Yet he dared not utter a sound. I whispered, "Who sent you?" Shen Ling's eyes darted around, refusing to speak. The dagger in my hand slowly pressed closer to his throat. 3, 2. His legs buckled. The emperor. How could it be the emperor? The princess ordered me to leave the capital. Someone must be opposing her, and I'd be implicated. But the emperor is the princess's own father, showering her with boundless favor. I'm not lying to you. Shen Ling was scared out of his wits. Otherwise, how could I dare bypass the princess to seek you out? I gradually calmed down. Indeed, when I mentioned the princess, he'd been utterly fearless. Who else but the emperor could grant him such confidence? Why did the emperor send you to find me? Shen Ling shook his head repeatedly. How could I dare question the emperor's intentions? I can only guess it's likely because of the princess. I pressed the dagger closer. Nonsense. The emperor clearly favors the princess. I wouldn't dare lie. Shenling pleaded. You don't know, while you were away from the capital, the princess staged a coup. I froze. A coup? I reacted just like you when I heard the news. Shenling hurried to explain. He and the princess were nearly married. He feared this capital offense would fall upon him. Shenling fumed. A young lady should keep her place. To dare stage a coup, what nerve. But the princess did stage a coup. The emperor sent men searching for you overnight, insisting you must have incited her. Me? What a load to carry. This is utterly baffling. Did the princess fail? I asked him. Shenling grimaced. I don't know. I left 3 days ago to find you. The emperor gave me the news. As for what's happening in the capital now, how could I possibly know? Shenling glanced at the dagger. I've said everything I needed to. Can you put it down now? My expression remained impassive. No. I shifted the dagger to press against his waist. My hand hidden within my sleeve. We'll talk outside. The princess's coup attempt could only mean 2 things. 1. Failure. Since the emperor knew my whereabouts, he'd find me sooner or later. Then whether I fled or not made no difference. 2. Success. If she succeeded, I'd have no reason to flee either. I pretended to submit to Shenling before everyone, boarding the carriage with him bound for the capital. Shortly before reaching the capital, the carriage was halted. A familiar face blocked the road. Huaiji smiled at me. Madam Chen. It's been a long time. The princess sent me to escort you. I remained silent for a long while. Had Huaiji come for me before today, I would have left with him without hesitation. But now, after hearing of the princess's coup attempt, I'd grown wary of everyone. I didn't know if the princess had succeeded, nor if Huaiji had betrayed her. Especially since, in my previous life, after the princess died in childbirth, I'd never heard of anyone named Huaiji in her entourage. So until I saw the princess, everything remained unknown. Shenling sensed my hesitation and suddenly began struggling. Help! Help! I'm being held hostage by Chen Wan. I immediately pinned Shenling down. By the time I regained my senses, the carriage was already surrounded by Huaiji's men. I lifted the curtain to look at the crowd outside. Is this also the princess's doing? Huaiji chuckled lightly. Just a precaution. As long as Lady Chen comes with me, they won't harm her. Shenling erupted in fury. I know you're the emperor's man too. I saw you by the emperor's side. He sent you to rescue me. Didn't he? I plunged the dagger into Shenling's arm again to silence him. Huaiji, however, remained silent, offering no rebuttal to Shenling's accusations. He merely smiled faintly. Madam Chen need only know this, I would never harm the princess. As for Shenling, the emperor still wishes to see him, so you cannot kill him. Sparing his life benefits both you and the princess. Shenling instantly grew smug. I told you, I've earned the emperor's trust. I drove another blade in. Expressionless. I won't kill you, but I won't let you live comfortably either. This matter had already exceeded my control. If I dwelled on personal grudges and pursued only immediate gains, I might cut off my own retreat. I released Shenling, trampling him underfoot. Guided by Shenling, we entered the capital city. Yet as we passed the princess's residence, the carriage did not stop. I turned sharply to look at Huaiji. Where are you taking me? Huaiji's smile was faint. The palace. Toc His Majesty, fear not, the emperor merely wishes to meet you. This was the first time I'd seen an emperor in my 2 lifetimes. The room lay in utter disarray, priceless porcelain vases and calligraphy scattered across the floor. The legendary sovereign paced the chamber, dark circles ringing his eyes. An air of intense irritation about him. You are Chen Wan? The emperor narrowed his eyes. Princess Changle holds you in high regard. Upon hearing I sent men for you, she immediately withdrew her troops. You truly carry significant weight in Princess Changle's heart. The princess withdrew her troops for me? I froze. Though the princess and I admired each other, our relationship hadn't reached that level. The heavily wounded Shenling interjected immediately. Yes, it was her. The emperor's gaze shifted to the dagger lodged in Shenling's shoulder. Shenling looked aggrieved. Your Majesty. That venomous woman Chen is ruthless. Not only did she incite the princess to force a coup, but she also wounded this humble subject. Your Majesty, you must avenge this humble subject. The emperor shot him a look of disgust before turning back to me. This dagger was Changle's most cherished possession. How could she have given it to you? I couldn't tell if it was my imagination. But I thought I saw unmasked jealousy and resentment in the emperor's eyes. But he quickly turned away. If you can persuade Changle, I will grant you any condition. I looked at Huaishi, who gave a slight nod. I bowed my head. I humbly await your Majesty's instructions. The emperor dismissed everyone and led me into the inner chamber. The room was clean and tidy, yet the shelves held no rare treasures. Instead, they displayed items typically used by young women: handkerchiefs embroidered with lotus flowers, delicate pink shoes, and distinctive yet common hairpins. Their presence in the study of the sovereign seemed particularly unsettling. The emperor scanned these items, letting out a soft sigh. Changle was my most cherished. I carefully preserved everything of hers. I gave her only the finest. Yet she remained insatiable, even harboring resentment toward me. Just days ago, she was incited by others to attempt a coup. Fortunately, she came to her senses in time, averting a major disaster. Truthfully, if she had only asked, I would have granted her anything. Why must she covet this imperial throne? Since you share a close bond with Changle, compose a letter to counsel her. She is nearing childbirth and must not be burdened with excessive worry. I lowered my gaze and nodded in agreement. Qin Yingwan, you are a wise one. The emperor nodded with satisfaction. I tentatively asked, and Shenling? The emperor's expression darkened, his tone thick with disgust. That Shenling is utterly repulsive. How dare he covet my Changle? On the day of the imperial wedding, he was targeted in an assassination attempt. Yet he cowardly fled, abandoning Changle to her fate. He deserves every torment he receives. With that, the emperor turned and left the study. When I next saw Shenling, I scarcely recognized him. His back was hunched, his entire frame shrunk by a head's height, his face a terrifying pallor. Shenling? I narrowed my eyes. The moment Shenling saw me, he instinctively tried to dodge, only to be blocked by the old eunuch behind him. The old eunuch kicked him in the back of the knee. Hurry up and pay your respects to the noble consort. You're bringing shame upon us. It hit me instantly. Shenling had been castrated. Shenling glared at me with hatred. You must have slandered me to His Majesty. Otherwise, with the princess carrying my child, how could I have ended up like this? The old eunuch slapped him hard across the face again. His Majesty has already declared the child of Princess Changle bears no relation to you. Dare utter another word of nonsense. Shenling snorted coldly, clinging stubbornly to his belief. I smiled faintly. Shenling, you still don't know? The truth is you were born infertile. Shenling's eyes widened in shock. You're lying. It's clearly your body that's unfit. I sighed, my expression softening with pity. To repay your parents' kindness, I agreed to 2 things for them. The first was to safeguard the Shen family's estate. The second was to conceal the secret of your congenital infertility. It was all for the Shen family's reputation and your pitiful pride. I never imagined you'd end up like this. I see no need to conceal it any longer. I pulled out a tail of silver and tossed it at him. If you doubt me, go ask the imperial physicians. Now that I'm no longer bribing the doctors behind your back, I'm sure no one will keep this from you anymore. Shenling stared at me in disbelief. I gave him one last look before walking away without a backward glance. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. The princess's mood had stabilized considerably after receiving my letter. These days, I often saw Huaishi coming and going from the palace. He was clearly a fence-sitter, drifting between the emperor and the princess. Whichever side held the upper hand, he'd come out unscathed. A few days later, Huaishi rushed to find the emperor. This was the first time I'd seen him look like this. His voice trembled uncontrollably. The princess is in labor. The emperor was both shocked and terrified. He Dispatched all the imperial physicians, but none could help. At that moment, I stepped forward. Your Majesty, I once received a life-saving elixir from a divine physician. The emperor immediately turned to me, striding quickly toward me. Bring it out now. I remained composed. The elixir is hidden somewhere within the capital. I must see the princess before I can reveal its location. Outwardly calm, I secretly glanced at Huaiji with nervous tension. Having escorted me all the way to the capital, he knew full well I couldn't have hidden the elixir in time. Yet, Huaiji met my gaze and did not expose me. The emperor seized my throat, threatening and bribing me. I insisted on seeing the princess first before handing over the medicine. He violently flung me aside. Take her to the princess's residence. He dared not gamble with the princess's life against mine. A quarter of an hour later, I saw the princess. Her face was pale and weak, blood flowing unchecked from her lower body. Yet she managed a faint smile for me. Qin Yingwan, you've come. I knew it. We are alike. I quickly produced the prepared elixir and fed it to her. Princess, you will be fine. The princess tugged at the corner of her mouth, her gaze shifting to Huaiji, whose expression remained inscrutable. Huaiji, I demand you swear on our child's life. If I don't survive today, you must ensure Qin Yingwan's safety. I stared sharply at Huaiji. He slowly nodded. This child is Huaiji's? The princess suddenly grasped my hand. If I pull through, I'll explain everything to you. After these words, the princess was struck by another violent wave of abdominal pain. When I left last time, I heard the princess say those words to me. I knew then that she, like me, had been reborn. Perhaps from that moment onward, our destinies became intertwined. I was led by servants to the side courtyard and soon heard that the princess's condition was critical. The emperor, desperate to see her one last time, rushed recklessly from the palace to see Chang'e. Even though Chang'e had recently staged a coup attempt, even plotting to kill the emperor, the front courtyard was in uproar. Faint clashes of blades echoing through the chaos. The commotion raged until deep into the night. When Huaiji came to find me, the heavy scent of blood clung to him. He smiled and said, "It's done." My voice trembled. "Speak clearly. Whose business is done?" Huaiji couldn't suppress a laugh. The princess's. I next saw Princess Chang'e within the palace walls. Her body was frail, yet she still clutched my hand tightly, urging me to look at her child. It was a girl. Chang'e murmured softly, her gaze meeting mine. I succeeded. All of this is thanks to you. I shook my head. She dismissed everyone. In the vast chamber, only the two of us remained. The exquisite bow still hung upon the wall. Chang'e spoke, having spent time by the emperor's side. You must understand. Since mother's death, he poured all his affection onto me. When I turned 14, he truly began treating me as his late mother. From that day on, I lived in his shadow. I constantly reminded myself not to lose my mind, and certainly not to become someone like him. Chang'e gazed at the bow on the wall. During those years, my only outlet was archery. I could even shoot an arrow through a willow leaf from 100 paces. My master said if I were a man, I could lead troops into battle. Her eyes shone as she recalled those days. Later, I met Huaiji. He taught me poetry and literature, and we gradually grew close. When the princess's mansion was built, I brought him along. The emperor always believed Huaiji was his confidant, helping him keep tabs on me all these years. That's why he never suspected him. But in truth, Huaiji was working to undermine him all along. I nodded slowly, then looked at the swaddled infant. So this child is truly Huaiji's? Chang'e nodded. Only the emperor believes this child is his. Chang'e scoffed. Otherwise, why would he be so frantic? Hearing that the child and I were near death, he rushed out of the palace regardless of the danger. Changle and I locked eyes for a long moment. Then both brought up matters from our past lives. Changle couldn't hide her regret, ultimately. It was all my fault. I intended to find a man without ties. Cold-hearted and unfeeling. To use. I never imagined I'd drag you into this. Truthfully, I knew assassins would strike on our wedding day. The Emperor pretended to support our marriage. Yet his heart seethed with hatred for Shenling, hatred that Shenling could become my husband openly and legitimately. Shenling's death was one thing. But I never imagined the Emperor's jealousy would run so deep that he wouldn't even spare you. So, at the critical moment, the princess rushed forward to shield me from that sword, yet in doing so, she etched me permanently into the Emperor's memory. The princess ordered me to leave immediately. Before I departed, she clung to her last hope, asking that question with a hint of desperation. Qin Yingwan, in your opinion, if certain events could be relived, would there be a chance for a different outcome? The princess knew she had died in childbirth in her previous life. Thus, she placed her sole hope upon me. The moment I said there might be a chance, we both knew our destinies were now intertwined. Only I could save her. And only she could pull me completely out of the mire. The first palace coup attempt was a minor skirmish, testing the Emperor's strength. The Emperor was unpredictable and tyrannical, and discontent had long simmered in the court. The true coup was baiting the snake out of its hole. When the princess's troops stormed the palace, she severed the Emperor's head at his bedside. No matter how you look at it, I dragged you into this. Do you resent me? I shook my head with a smile. What can be done? Gazing at Princess Changle before me, I felt no resentment, only that she shone brilliantly. Without her, perhaps I wouldn't have endured these trials. But I'd remain bound to the Shen family for life. Until death. Still defending the pitiful pride of one man for the Shen elders. Tears glistened in Changle's eyes. When she looked up again, her gaze was unusually resolute as she clasped my hand tightly. There's one last thing. Concerning Huaiji. Several days later in the imperial study, Huaiji was organizing state affairs. Suddenly, a servant reported that the princess's condition was critical. Huaiji dropped everything and rushed over. I stood beside the cradle, calling anxiously, Huaiji, come quickly! He dashed over, completely unprepared. As he neared the cradle, I abruptly drew my sword and pressed it against his throat. Huaiji froze rigid. Madam Qin, what are you doing? I narrowed my eyes. That question should be directed at you. You claim to act solely for the princess. Yet after she successfully forced the throne, you secretly recruited troops and won over hearts. What are your true intentions? Huaiji remained silent for a long while before suddenly letting out a soft chuckle and glancing toward the doorway. Princess, if you have questions, why not ask me directly? Changle emerged from the shadows, bow and arrows in hand. Huaiji's voice was gentle. Princess, your health hasn't fully recovered. Why have you gotten out of bed? Changle gave a cold laugh. If I lingered a few more days, this empire would likely bear your surname. You've truly labored tirelessly, hiding your identity by my side all these years, solely for the restoration of the former dynasty. Changle had long known that Huaiji was the sole survivor of the former imperial family. She also knew that Huaiji had remained by her side all this time, waiting for this very day. Yet in the past, when progress was arduous, she could only allow the ambitious Huaiji to scheme in secret. Yet Changle never once lowered her guard. Huaiji sighed and shook his head. Princess, why must you be so confrontational? He suddenly attacked, raising his hand to block my sword. I swung with all my strength. Yet he recklessly shielded himself with his arm, drawing a dagger from his sleeve to counter me. His right arm nearly severed, blood gushing. Yet he smiled as if nothing had happened. Princess, whether I restore the throne or not, it will have no bearing on you. I know you desire the emperor's seat. But since ancient times, men have held supremacy. Even if you ascended, no one would truly acknowledge your authority. But I am different. I am the last heir of the former dynasty, the legitimate bloodline. Now we have a child. When I ascend the throne, you shall be my one and only woman, the Empress. Second to none. Whatever you desire or wish to do, I shall make it happen. So what difference does it make whether you become emperor or not? Changel laughed aloud. If you believe being emperor makes no difference, why do you obediently serve as my consort? Crawling at my feet like before? Why are you winning over the court while I'm still recovering? Huaiji frowned, then quickly regained his composure. Princess, put down the bow and arrow, and I'll release Jiningwan. I'll pretend nothing ever happened. Huaiji glanced at the cradle and smiled faintly. If not for yourself, then for our child. Changel remained silent. She silently nocked an arrow, aiming it at Huaiji. Huaiji narrowed his eyes, pressing the dagger against my throat closer. Changel looked at me. Jiningwan, do you trust me? I've told you. I once shot an arrow through a willow leaf from 100 paces. Huaiji laughed. The princess is still recovering. Please don't accidentally kill Lady Qin. Changel offered no reply, silently drawing her bow. Under Huaiji's smiling gaze, she slowly shifted the arrow's angle, aiming it at the cradle. If I am destined to be trapped for this lifetime, then I at least hope no other bird will be caged. The arrow was on the string. Changel's voice eerily calm. The next instant, a sharp whistling sound filled the air. Huaiji's eyes widened in horror as he lunged forward, disregarding everything. At the same moment, I darted to the side, snatched my sword, and thrust it toward Huaiji's chest as he stood before the cradle. Huaiji collapsed to the ground, clutching his wound. Glancing back at the arrow embedded in the pillar, he seemed resigned to his fate, yet his eyes still held confusion. Changel, aren't you afraid of missing your mark and truly hurting our child? Have you no maternal instinct whatsoever? Changel stepped before him, glaring down. Before I possess any maternal instinct, I am first and foremost a true human being. The freedom she had fought for half her life would not be taken from her by anyone. Extra chapter. When I returned to the capital from the northern lands with my cargo, the city had already welcomed its second spring. A 3-year-old girl in tiger head shoes ran toward me, flopping softly into my arms. Auntie Qin, the sovereign, robed in yellow, stood at the palace gate to greet me personally. Civil and military officials lined both sides as I stepped forward before Changel. You've returned. Was the north cold? I smiled. Your Majesty's concern is deeply felt. Though in the north, I always sense the capital's spring warmth. Changel clasped my hand tightly. 2 years of letters could never replace this moment. We entered the palace, speaking endlessly to each other. After Changel ascended the throne, many indeed resented her, but she dealt with each one meticulously. Once her power reached its zenith, no one dared question her gender. She established imperial examinations for women, allowed them to enter the palace as officials, and granted them equal rights to men. She appointed me as a diplomatic envoy, while I expanded her territories for her. I also traveled across the magnificent landscapes of the land. Our story was recorded and adapted into a theatrical production. I attended a performance later, though embellished in parts. It largely depicted real events. The theater was filled with female patrons. As the play began, I overheard 2 sisters chatting. What would you do if you faced such a situation? The other woman laughed indifferently. Women can hold office. They can do business. Why waste your life over a man? It's just a man. The end.